The nervous system is simply going to enact a response, and it doesn't assign motivation or create moral meaning. It simply acts. And so when we understand how it works, we can then turn toward it and ask the question, what's happening right now? What does my nervous system need in this moment to be able to feel a little more moving towards regulation? My passion is helping people understand their nervous system, understand how it works, because when we understand how it works, we can work with it and work with trauma, work with everyday challenges, work with the challenge of the grief journey, how to create life after loss and how to be informed by our nervous systems as we're creating that next phase, as we're moving through whatever your particular grief journey looks like. And I think, when we think about the nervous system, we have 3 organizing principles that the nervous system works within, but within those organizing principles, we each have our own response, and we create our own patterns and survival strategies within those organizing principles. So what I think we need to do is understand how the nervous system works, and then we have to understand how our particular or our clients' particular nervous systems work. Our job is to speak nervous system, right? Speak the language of the nervous system, so that we can then turn toward and say, oh, now I understand, right? I'm totally, out of control in anxiety or anger. And my nervous system is simply trying to tell me the cues of danger that are coming at you right now are outweighing the cues of safety. It's a simple equation. Right. I mean, it's a simple equation, not easy to work with, but it's a simple equation, right? Dr. Aimie, it's when the cues of danger outweigh the cues of safety, I'm going into a survival strategy, whether it's fight, flight, or collapse, right? I don't have a choice about it. It's not a cognitive choice. It's a biological one. So if I know that, then I can sometimes be able to say, well, let me think, what are the cues of danger? Where are the cues of safety in my world that I can reach for? And I can begin to rebalance that equation.
You're really speaking to this idea of the neuroception with its ability to receive cues, whether from the outside, from other people, the space between, or inside. There's neuroceptive cues inside of us that will be cues of danger or cues of safety. And the neuroception, like you've referred to, is not our conscious logical mind. What a tension there can be between the two, where we can think like, what's my problem? I shouldn't be this. And yet my nervous system is doing something. And the value of being able to bring all of that to the conscious awareness, so that it's not that internal battle of, I don't even know what's happening, I don't even like what's happening, but we can move into that, my nervous system is going through something right now, and I can be curious about what are the cues of danger that it's receiving right now, and what does it need, so that I can align myself with it, befriend it, and normalize that.
Yes. Yeah. And that inside outside between those 3 pathways that your nervous system is always receiving information through, inside your bodies, outside in the environment, and between, in that space between nervous systems, is happening micro moment to micro moment below the level of our conscious awareness all the time. You can't turn it off, right? But we're not taught to listen to that. We're not taught how to pay attention to that. So part of our work is to turn toward and learn to listen. Right? Because again, if you don't listen, the nervous system will get louder and louder, take more extreme action, right? And we all know what happens then, right? It gets really messy. So I think we need to learn to listen and then make a choice about what we do. So in this moment, some familiar cue of danger might come alive and take over my system and take me down my survival strategy path, because that's what it's supposed to do. It's working as it should. And if I can turn toward it and say, wait a minute, is this needed in this moment? That's bringing discernment to this implicit process, bring it to explicit awareness and adding discernment. Sometimes the answer I get is probably not needed, right? Probably don't need to have this huge response. It can be smaller. right? Or maybe, sometimes the response I get is, yeah, it is needed today. You need to just give it up today and say, okay, right? But when we listen to our nervous system and engage with it, we can make a conscious choice. And even if that choice is, I'm going to, cancel everything and spend the day in my pajamas, that is a different experience to make that conscious choice than it is to simply end up on the couch in your pajamas, blowing off everything you were supposed to do. Right? That's your nervous system just doing it. The other is I'm partnering with and making a conscious choice that yes, today needs to be a day where I don't do anything. What does your nervous system need? Not what does it need to be regulated enough to do the thing, but simply what does your nervous system need? That's the response that a nervous system is looking for. What does it need? You bring curiosity, and that's great. So yeah, neuroception is always working, and you can think right now, you can do that simple survey of your own system in this moment. If you listened inside, what's happening? What are the cues of danger, the warnings that your inside pathway is giving you?
As you described, that there are days when dorsal vagal is exactly where we need to be. And we get to befriend that, and we get to allow that. And it sounds like what you're talking about with cues of safety is that we can still use cues of safety in those moments as anchors for ventral. So that it's almost like we don't forget where home is, and we're going to come back home, but we can actually intentionally bring in enough cues of safety while we are in a dorsal vagal day of our grief.
Yeah, and it's, I love how you say home, because I call ventral home, and I think every human has a home in ventral. You may not have visited it often, you may not know it, but it's built into your biology. We all have a home in ventral, and when you have something happen that totally disrupts your world, for me, knowing that I do have a home in ventral is really helpful, right? And I find these tiny moments when I visit there, and it's a reminder, oh yeah, I have a home in ventral, and my nervous system knows how to get there. That's the other thing we want to remember. I truly believe the nervous system inherently knows the way to ventral. And in fact, we visit it in tiny moments all the time. So remembering that and really believing that is really helpful, because then I can enter into a day, we have a home away from home, is the other place we have. And that's the survival state that you are more often drawn into. My home away from home is dorsal, as you probably got from my few minutes of talking here. My home away from home is dorsal. It's where my nervous system takes me when things feel too much. For other people, your home away from home is sympathetic. You get really mobilized, activated, either anxiety or anger, or have to work, have to move. All the shoulds come. Right? And if you can have a tiny bit of ventral alive at the same time, just enough so that you recognize, you can have a little bit of observation energy on board, then you can be in those survival states a bit differently. You're not just in them with no awareness. So if you can have a bit of awareness, which is a ventral experience, you have to have some ventral to have awareness, then you can be aware of it and you can make some other choices. So, I can have a dorsal day and not be ashamed of it, right? I can have a dorsal day and say my nervous system is telling me this is what's needed, and I'm going to truly embrace this dorsal day, right? And then it is helpful if you have people around you who recognize that, because people around you are going to tell you you should or you shouldn't something, and should and shouldn't are sympathetically driven words.
One of the important concepts of the polyvagal theory is this idea that our pre-existing state influences so much of our response to any given moment.
Whether we're trying to create a life after loss, or whether we're trying to recover from, anything that has happened, or whether we have a diagnosis of any kind, the cure, so to speak, what we do to help change that is to change our nervous system. I love knowing that, I can partner with my nervous system, and every time I do that and I find my way to another moment of ventral, right, then I'm reshaping my system. And that's what we want to remember. You are reshaping your nervous system every moment. We always just keep coming back to ventral because it is so needed for healing, for moving forward, for creating. And it's sometimes really hard to find. We just want to name that. It's sometimes hard to find for all of us. I talk about glimmers all the time, and glimmers are those tiny moments of ventral that happen all the time. And we don't really have to look hard to find them. My daughter we were on the phone. She was out for her walk this morning and she called me and a bird sang in the background. And I said, oh my gosh, a bird. That was my glimmer. That was a ventral moment. So we all have those moments. Think for yourselves in the day that you had so far today. When was one of those moments for you? When was a glimmer? Because they happen all the time. And if we can find those, that builds ventral capacity. That's the easy way to build ventral capacity. And it feels even in the depths of post-traumatic response, in the depths of loneliness and grief and loss, we can find a glimmer, right? Finding glimmers does not in any way change the suffering you're in. But it is a reminder that the nervous system is exquisitely able to be in suffering and find a tiny moment of okayness. And that's the beauty of the nervous system. That's what we want to be looking for.